As a child, did you love playing outside? You'd call your friends for a game of tag. But before you leave, your mother reminds you that you shouldn't stay out in the sun too long. You shrug it off and say that being out in the sun isn't harmful. Well, it actually can be. You see, the sun gives off a lot of waves and energy. It is the primary source of light and heat, and without it, the world wouldn't be able to thrive, and we'd all be dead by now. The sun brings three types of electromagnetic radiation: visible light, infrared, and ultraviolet. Visible light is the light that the sun provides us. It is what allows people to see. However, the other two are not visible to the human eye. So let's soar across the sky of knowledge and find out what exactly is infrared and ultraviolet.
Infrared radiation or infrared light is a type of electromagnetic radiation that we cannot see. We don't see it, but we feel it as heat. It's a continuum of frequencies produced when an atom absorbs and emits energy. According to NASA, the frequency of infrared is between 300 GHz and about 400 THz, with wavelengths ranging from 1000 micrometers and 760 nanometers. Infrared waves come from anything that gives off heat. Anything with temperature, whether hot or cold, radiates infrared energy. But the most natural source of this is the sun. The infrared energy the sun emits is absorbed by the molecules in the earth, which is then converted into heat energy. That's why the sun is responsible for the warming of the earth. There are multiple ways to use infrared. Whenever we turn on our TV from a distance, we use remotes. How this is made possible is because of the infrared light that carries signals from the remote to the television. It emits pulses that correspond to specific binary codes with a specific action. Infrared is also utilized in fiber optic cables. Fiber optic cables transfer data cables in the form of light and travel hundreds of miles. This makes it faster than the traditional electrical cables. It's widely used for transmitting audio to sound systems, and also used for high-speed internet connections. From what I've said, you'd think that infrared is incredibly dangerous, but in reality, it isn't even a threat. Infrared radiation is one of the non-ionizing types of electromagnetic radiation. This means that it isn't harmful in any way. Humans also emit infrared radiation, but it isn't considered hazardous if we stay in human proximity for too long. However, infrared is not actually heat. It is radiated heat and the form of energy transfer. Heat is actually produced by infrared waves, so it isn't heat itself. Many people assume that it's the heat from the sun or the infrared rays that causes suntan, but infrared waves have long wavelengths, which means that they don't penetrate the skin. It doesn't have a detrimental effect on our skin, and it doesn't affect any of the melanin within the skin cells. The real reason for tanning is the ultraviolet rays.
Ultraviolet radiation is also a type of electromagnetic wave that isn't seen by the human eye. It has a shorter wavelength compared to infrared, but that also means that it has more frequency and energy. Ultraviolet can be classified into three categories: ultraviolet A or UVA, ultraviolet B or UVB, and ultraviolet C or UVC, which is in the order of increasing energy. Being exposed to too much of this can be hazardous because it can damage living tissue. Ultraviolet waves are emitted by the sun, which is its main and primary source. However, it is only a small portion of the sun's rays. About 95% of the UV rays from the sun that reach the ground are UVA rays, with the remaining 5% being UVB rays. It has its benefits because it creates vitamin D, which is essential for human beings. But it can cause health risks like cancer and eye diseases. Despite its negative effects, ultraviolet radiation has been very beneficial to mankind. It can be used for illumination, providing energy-efficient bright light. This is convenient for workplaces that need heavy amounts of light for extended periods of time. Ultraviolet rays can also be used in the medical field, providing phototherapy which can counter multiple skin diseases like acne, jaundice, psoriasis, eczema, and other conditions like seasonal depression. Tanning is caused by ultraviolet radiation. However, if exposed to this for too long, it may lead to sunburn. To avoid sunburn, most people use sunscreen, especially when going swimming where sunburn commonly happens. One common misconception is that lotions with higher SPF will last longer than those with lower SPF. Except this is wrong. The higher the SPF, the more resistant or effective it is to ultraviolet rays. This doesn't mean that it will last longer. Although the sun releases ultraviolet radiation from its rays, this doesn't mean that we are protected from it when under the shade. It does provide more protection compared to being exposed to direct sunlight. However, ultraviolet B or UVB can still reach our skin and our eyes by bouncing back on reflective surfaces. To provide ourselves with better protection, it is advised to wear sunglasses even when in the shade.
Now let's review what we just learned about today. The sun emits 3 types of electromagnetic radiation: visible light, infrared, and ultraviolet. Visible light is the light that the sun radiates. It is what allows us to see. Infrared and ultraviolet are the 2 rays that you can't see. Infrared waves can be felt in the form of heat, and its primary source is the sun. These waves are also used in objects like remote controls, DVD players, projectors, and fiber optic cables which provide high internet connections. People usually assume that this is hazardous, but in reality, it's as normal as the heat that people radiate. Ultraviolet waves have greater frequency and energy compared to infrared waves, therefore it has a shorter wavelength. It has 3 categories, which are UVA, UVB, and UVC. Its most primary and natural source is the sun, and it's what causes tanning and sunburns. Ultraviolet rays can be used to create bright lights that require less energy, and it can also be used as a medical treatment for skin diseases. Despite being under a shade, we can still be hit by UV rays that bounce off of reflective surfaces, so wearing sunglasses is a good way to stay extra protected. Despite the harmful effects that we may get from being under the sun, we shouldn't hide ourselves away from the sunlight. The sun can bring many nutrients to our body, specifically vitamin D. Being careful about your exposure time and using the right products may keep you more protected from UV rays. Remember to keep safe, use sunscreen, and don't stay out too late playing under the sun.